Dr. Sarah Chen stood motionless before the massive display screen at the SETI Research Center, her eyes fixed on the patterns that shouldn't exist. The signal had appeared 3 days ago, defying every known law of physics and astronomical observation. It wasn't just that the transmission was clear, it was the fact that it seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. "Run it again," she ordered, her voice steadied despite the tremor in her hands. The technicians behind her exchanged glances but complied, initiating another analysis of the mysterious signal. The haunting sequence of pulses filled the room once more, a pattern that had already burned itself into Sarah's memory. Admiral James Harrison arrived within hours of her urgent message to the United Nations Space Command. His weathered face betrayed no emotion as he studied the data, but Sarah noticed his fingers drumming against his thigh. A nervous tick she remembered from their days at the academy. "You're certain about this?" he asked, though they both knew he wouldn't be here if there was any doubt. "The signal isn't just a message, James. It's a warning." Sarah pulled up the decoded segments they'd managed to translate. "Something is coming. Something that has the entire galaxy terrified." Before Harrison could respond, every screen in the facility suddenly blazed with new data. A ship had appeared in high Earth orbit, bypassing all defense systems, as if they didn't exist. But instead of attacking, it broadcast a simple message in perfect English. "We need your help. Only humanity can save us all." The ship belonged to the Orcs, a species so advanced that their technology seemed like magic. Their ambassador, a being of crystalline grace named Zoratel, appeared before the hastily assembled United Nations Security Council within hours of their arrival. "We have watched your species for centuries." Zoratel's melodious voice filled the chamber, "but we never understood what made you unique until now. The entity that threatens us, that threatens all conscious life, cannot touch your minds." The council chamber erupted in confusion, but Harrison's voice cut through the chaos. "What entity?" Zoratel's crystalline form shimmed with what might have been fear. "We call it the void consciousness. It devours minds, turns entire species into extensions of its will. Every civilization we've encountered has fallen to it, except yours." Sarah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding protocol. "What makes us different?" "Your brains evolved in isolation, developing natural barriers against psychic invasion. While other species pursued technological advancement, humanity's consciousness evolved defenses against external influence. You cannot be corrupted by the entity." Satellite feeds showed more Orcs ships arriving, but they weren't positioning themselves for invasion. They were forming a defensive perimeter around Earth. "The entity is approaching your sector of space," Zoratel continued. "Our weapons cannot harm it. Our shields cannot stop it. But your minds are naturally shielded. And we believe you can learn to project that protection to others." Harrison's eyes met Sarah's across the chamber. They both understood the implications. Humanity had always wondered why they seemed alone in the galaxy, why no other civilizations had contacted them. Now they knew. They weren't primitive. They were unique. "How long do we have?" Harrison asked. "Months, perhaps. We can teach you to use our technology, combine it with your natural abilities. But you must understand, this will change everything. Your species will have to advance centuries in a matter of months." Sarah watched as understanding dawned on the faces around her. Humanity had spent its history looking to the stars, wondering if they were alone, wondering if they mattered in the grand scheme of the universe. Now they had their answer. They weren't just participants in the cosmic drama. They were essential to its survival. "There's more," Zoratel added, her crystalline form pulsing with urgency. "We've detected something extraordinary about human consciousness. Your natural barriers aren't just defensive. We believe that, properly trained, humans could develop abilities that no other species has achieved. You could become something unprecedented in the galaxy's history." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had always viewed itself as a young, relatively primitive species. But what if their perceived isolation had allowed them to evolve in a completely different direction? What if their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their intelligence, but something far more fundamental? Harrison straightened his uniform and stepped forward. How do we begin? Zaratel's form brightened. We start by awakening what has always been dormant within you. The void consciousness believes it will find another easy conquest here. Instead, it will find humanity. And for the first time in its existence, it will know fear. As the Oraxian ships continued to arrive in Earth orbit, Sarah began to understand. Humanity had spent its history fighting itself, struggling with its own nature. But those struggles had forged something unique in the galaxy. A species that could not be mentally dominated, could not be turned against itself by external forces. They weren't just resistant to psychic invasion. They were immune to it. The first training sessions began within days. Humans from every nation were tested, and the results were staggering. Not only could they resist the psychic probes of Oraxian technology, but they could actively push back against them. What the Oraxians saw as an impenetrable mental barrier was actually something far more dynamic, a force that could be projected, strengthened, and used to shield others. As Sarah watched the first successful demonstrations, she realized that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. They weren't just going to fight for survival. They were going to redefine what was possible in the galaxy. The void consciousness was coming, but it was about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating the species it saw as primitive. Humanity was about to show the galaxy why evolution had given them such unique defenses. They weren't just going to survive. They were going to become the protectors of all conscious life in the universe. The silent defenders that no one, not even an ancient cosmic horror, had seen coming. The training facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains hummed with activity as Dr. Sarah Chen studied the latest test results. 3 months had passed since first contact with the Oraxians, and what they'd discovered about human potential had exceeded even their most optimistic predictions. "Show me the comparison again," she requested, and the holographic display flickered to life, showing brain-wave patterns from different species. The Oraxian patterns were complex mathematical symphonies, the result of millions of years of technological evolution. But the human patterns were something else entirely. They looked almost like natural shields, layers of consciousness folded in on themselves. Admiral Harrison entered the observation room, his footsteps echoing on the metal floor. The latest training group just finished their trials, he announced, his voice carrying a mix of pride and astonishment. 98% success rate. Sarah nodded, unsurprised. Each new group of recruits was advancing faster than the last, as if humanity's dormant abilities were awakening exponentially. "It's not just that we're resistant to psychic influence," she explained, highlighting specific patterns in the display. "Our minds actively adapt to and counter any attempt at external control." Below them, in the main training chamber, a young woman named Maya Rodriguez was demonstrating this ability. The Oraxian training device, designed to simulate the psychic attacks of the void consciousness, pulsed with energy. Maya stood calmly in its field, not just blocking the assault, but redirecting it. "They're calling it the echo effect," Harrison said, watching Maya's performance. "Every attempt to breach a human's mental defenses not only fails but provides us with more information about the attacker." Zaratel's crystalline form shimmered into existence beside them, the Oraxian's presence adding a soft glow to the room. "What you're achieving shouldn't be possible," she observed. "Your species developed these defenses naturally, without any understanding of their significance. But now that you're conscious of them—" She trailed off as Maya did something unprecedented. The training device's energy field wasn't just being blocked or redirected, it was being absorbed and transformed. The readouts showed her mental patterns strengthening, evolving in real time. "That's new," Sarah breathed, quickly capturing the data. They'd seen humans resist and deflect psychic energy before, but this was different. Maya wasn't just defending. She was growing stronger from the attempt to breach her mental barriers. Harrison leaned forward, his military mind already seeing the tactical implications. If we can replicate this, if we can teach others to not just resist but grow stronger from these attacks, the void consciousness won't just fail to corrupt humanity. Zaratel finished. It will make you more powerful every time it tries. The discovery sparked a revolution in their training methods. Instead of just teaching humans to maintain their natural barriers, they began focusing on this adaptive response. Each simulated attack became an opportunity for growth, for strengthening not just their defenses, but their understanding of how consciousness itself worked. Sarah spent countless hours with the recruits, helping them understand what made their minds unique. Human consciousness evolved in layers, she explained to a group of trainees. Each challenge we faced as a species added new defenses, new ways of processing and protecting our identity. What other species achieved through technology, we developed naturally. The implications went beyond just defense. As humans became more aware of their mental architecture, they began developing abilities that stunned even the Orcsians. Some could extend their natural barriers to protect others. Others learned to sense the presence of corrupted minds at vast distances. A few even showed signs of being able to heal minds that had been damaged by psychic assault. But it was Maya who made the most startling breakthrough. During a high-intensity training session, she didn't just absorb and redirect the simulated attack, she turned it into a weapon. The training device overloaded, unable to handle the transformed energy she sent back at it. "It's like we've been looking at this all wrong," she explained afterward, her eyes bright with understanding. "These aren't just shields or barriers. They're more like mirrors. We don't just reflect attacks. We can change them, use them." Harrison immediately saw the military potential. If we can turn the void consciousness attacks back on itself. More than that, Sarah interjected. Every attack makes us stronger, teaches us more about how it thinks, how it fights. We're not just defending anymore. We're evolving in response to the threat. The Orcsians watched these developments with a mixture of awe and hope. They had come to Earth expecting to find allies who could resist the void consciousness. Instead, they found a species that might actually be capable of defeating it. As the training program expanded globally, patterns began to emerge. Every human had this potential, but it manifested differently in each person. Some were natural shields, capable of protecting vast groups. Others were more like sensors, able to detect and analyze psychic energy. And a few, like Maya, showed combat potential that exceeded anything they had thought possible. "We're creating something entirely new," Sarah realized one evening, reviewing the data from thousands of training sessions. Not just soldiers or defenders, but a whole new way of understanding consciousness itself. Harrison nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "The question is, will we be ready in time? The void consciousness is still coming, and we don't know exactly when it will arrive." As if in answer to his question, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Zaratel appeared, her crystalline form pulsing with urgent light. "Our long-range sensors have detected something. The entity. It's moving faster than we predicted. We don't have months anymore." Sarah and Harrison exchanged looks. They had hoped for more time, but perhaps they already had what they needed. Humanity had spent its entire history preparing for this moment, even if they hadn't known it. Every struggle, every challenge had helped forge the mental defenses they now wielded consciously. The void consciousness was coming, but it was about to encounter something it had never faced before. A species that grew stronger from every attack, that turned its own weapons against it. Humanity was ready to show the galaxy that sometimes the best defense isn't technology or physical strength, but the immutable power of a mind that refuses to be conquered. The combined fleet hung in high orbit around Jupiter, a testament to the unprecedented cooperation between humanity and the Orcsians. Each human vessel had been retrofitted with Orcsian technology, creating hybrid ships that could channel both physical and psychic defenses. But it was the crews that made them truly unique. Every ship carried a complement of trained human psychic defenders. Maya Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the flagship Aegis, her hands resting lightly on the neural interface console. Through it, she could feel the minds of her fellow defenders throughout the fleet, all of them linked in a way that would have been impossible just months ago. But unlike the forced unity of the void consciousness, this connection was built on choice and trust. Contact. The sensor operator's voice cut through the tension. Multiple vessels emerging from subspace, bearing 037. Admiral Harrison's voice remained steady as he gave the order. All ships, battle formation Delta. Dr. Chen, status of the psychic defense grid. From her position in the command center, Sarah monitored the complex web of human consciousness that now protected the fleet. The network is stable. All defenders report ready. The enemy ships that appeared were unlike anything they had expected. Where the Oraxians' vessels were crystalline and elegant, these were dark wounds in space itself. They moved with unnatural precision, crewed by beings that had already fallen to the void consciousness's influence. Those were the Nexari. Zaratel's voice was heavy with sorrow. Once they were peaceful explorers. Now they're just extensions of the entity's will. The first attack came not as weapons fire, but as a wave of psychic energy that rolled across space toward the human fleet. This was how the void consciousness had conquered so many species, overwhelming their minds before a single shot was fired. But humanity was ready. Maya closed her eyes, channeling the defensive techniques they'd developed. Around her, hundreds of other human defenders did the same. The psychic attack hit their combined barrier and didn't just stop. It shattered, fragments of the hostile energy dissipating harmlessly into space. "It's prodding our defenses," Sarah reported, analyzing the data, testing for weaknesses. Wait, something's changing. The void consciousness, finding its initial attack ineffective, tried a new approach. The psychic assault became more focused, more precise, targeting individual ships instead of the fleet as a whole. But this was exactly what they had trained for. "Initiate Echo Protocol," Harrison commanded. Maya felt the shift in the defensive network as they implemented their most ambitious strategy. Instead of just blocking the attacks, they began absorbing them, using the energy to strengthen their own barriers. Each assault made them stronger, just as their training had shown. The entity, sensing something unprecedented, launched its corrupted ships forward. But the human fleet was ready for this too. Oraxian weapons combined with human intuition created attack patterns that no logic could predict. While the void consciousness sought patterns to exploit, humanity's natural chaos proved to be its greatest strength. Multiple hits on enemy vessels, the tactical officer reported. "Their coordination is breaking down." Sarah's eyes widened as she studied the sensor readings. The echo effect. It's working on a scale we never imagined. Every attack they launch gives us more insight into their consciousness structure. Maya felt it too. Each attempt to breach their defenses revealed more about how the entity thought, how it controlled its thralls. And with each revelation, they learned to fight back more effectively. "They're retreating," someone announced, but Harrison shook his head. "No, they're regrouping. This was just the first wave. A test." He was right. The next attack came from multiple vectors, accompanied by a psychic assault that dwarfed the first. But now they understood more about their enemy, and humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt. Maya initiated the countermeasure they'd developed, drawing on the combined power of the Defender network. This time, when the psychic energy hit their barriers, they didn't just absorb it. They transformed it, turning the attack back on itself. The effect was immediate and devastating. The corrupted ships faltered as their crews, for the first time, felt their connection to the void consciousness weaken. Some of the Nexari, their minds momentarily freed, turned their weapons on their former controllers. "By the stars," Zaratel whispered, "you're not just resisting it. You're breaking its hold on others." Harrison allowed himself a small smile. "Every species has its breaking point. We just had to find the entities." The battle continued for hours, each wave of attacks growing more desperate as the void consciousness found its usual tactics not just ineffective but counterproductive. Every attempt to dominate human minds provided more information, more understanding of its own nature. Finally, the enemy fleet withdrew entirely, leaving behind liberated Nexari ships and a wealth of tactical data. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. "We've shown it can be fought," Sarah said during the post-battle briefing. "Not just resisted, but actively opposed. But it will adapt, try new approaches." "Let it," Maya responded, her voice firm. "Every new tactic it tries teaches us more about how to defeat it. We're not just defending anymore. We're learning how to free those it's enslaved." Harrison studied the battle recordings, his expression thoughtful. "We've given the galaxy something it hasn't had in a long time," he said quietly. "Hope." But as they celebrated their first victory, long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures moving toward human space. The void consciousness had learned it could not easily overcome humanity, so it was gathering its full strength for the next encounter. The real war was about to begin, and its outcome would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of consciousness itself in the galaxy. Maya Rodriguez sat alone in the meditation chamber aboard the Aegis, her consciousness stretched to its limits as she maintained contact with the liberated Nexari. The process of helping them rebuild their mental barriers was exhausting, but essential. Each freed mind provided new insights into the nature of their enemy and the true scope of what humanity was facing. "You should rest." Dr. Chen's voice came from the doorway. Sarah entered quietly, carrying holographic readouts of Maya's latest neural scans. "You've been at this for 18 hours straight." Maya opened her eyes slowly, and Sarah noticed they had changed. There were now faint patterns of light moving in her irises, a physical manifestation of her evolved abilities. "They're remembering who they were," Maya said softly, "before the entity took them. The pain, it's overwhelming." Sarah sat beside her former student, now humanity's most powerful psychic defender. "We're learning things about consciousness that we never imagined possible," she said, displaying the neural scans. "Your mind is actually creating new structures, new ways of processing reality itself." Before Maya could respond, Admiral Harrison entered with Zora telephone. The Araxian's crystalline form was dimmer than usual, a sign of distress. "Show them," Harrison commanded, his voice grave. Zaratel projected a galactic map, with vast sections now pulsing an ominous red. "The void consciousness is consuming entire sectors of space, faster than ever before. It's adapting to our resistance. What we thought was its full strength was merely a fraction of its true power." The map zoomed in on a particular sector, showing massive fleet movements. But these weren't just ships, they were entire celestial bodies, moved by the entity's incomprehensible power. "It's not just controlling minds anymore," Harrison explained. "It's reshaping reality on a cosmic scale." Maya stood, her movements careful as she studied the map. "Because we showed it something new," she realized. "Our resistance forced it to evolve, just as its attacks made us stronger." She turned to Sarah. "The ancient human potential you've been theorizing about. We need to understand it now." Sarah nodded, pulling up research data she'd been gathering since their first victory. "Early humans developed consciousness differently from every other species we've encountered. While others evolved toward technological advancement, our minds developed layers of complexity that we're only beginning to understand." She displayed brain scans from multiple species. The Araxians achieved mental powers through technology, the Nexari through biological manipulation. But humans, our consciousness evolved to be naturally multidimensional. Each layer of our minds exists in slightly different phase of reality. "That's why we can't be controlled," Maya said, understanding dawning. "The entity can't grasp all layers of our consciousness at once." "But it's more than that, isn't it?" Harrison stepped forward. "Show them the Lazarus Project data." Sarah hesitated, then brought up new scans, these from humans who had suffered catastrophic psychic trauma during the battles. We thought these defenders were lost, their minds burned out by contact with the entity. But look at what actually happened. The scans showed something extraordinary. Rather than being destroyed, these minds had transformed. New neural pathways had formed, operating on principles that defied conventional physics. They're not dying, Sarah explained. They're transcending, evolving into something beyond our current understanding of consciousness. Maya remembered the defenders who had been pulled from battle, apparently comatose. They're not lost, she whispered. They're ascending. Yes, Zaratel confirmed. And the entity fears this more than anything else. It consumes consciousness, bends it to its will. But humanity transforms it into something new, something it cannot control. An alert sounded throughout the ship. Harrison moved to the command console, his expression hardening as he read the data. Multiple rifts opening in nearby space. The entity isn't waiting anymore. It's bringing its full force to bear. Maya stood, her evolved eyes now blazing with inner light. Then we show it everything we've become. Doctor, how do we accelerate the transformation? Sarah's hands flew over her console, compiling data from hundreds of neural scans. The transformation seems triggered by extreme psychic stress, but guided by our natural mental architecture. If we could somehow map that architecture, replicate it. You're talking about forced evolution of human consciousness, Harrison warned. The risks are nothing compared to what happens if we fail, Maya finished. She turned to Zora's telephone. Your ship's neural interfaces, can they be modified to amplify and channel human brainwave patterns? The Araxian's form brightened with understanding. Yes, they could. But the power requirements. We'll give it power, Harrison said grimly. Whatever it takes. But we do this voluntarily. No one is ordered to risk their consciousness. To everyone's surprise, there was no shortage of volunteers. Humans had always been willing to sacrifice for a greater cause, and now that sacrifice might save not just Earth, but all conscious life in the galaxy. Maya helped design the modified neural interfaces, combining her battlefield experience with Sarah's theoretical understanding of human consciousness. Each volunteer would be connected not just to their ship's systems, but to a network that could amplify and channel their mind's natural evolution. As the massive fleet of the void consciousness approached, humanity prepared to take its greatest gamble. They weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to become something new, something that could stand against the darkness that threatened all consciousness. The entity thinks it knows what we are, Maya told the assembled defenders before they began. It thinks it understands consciousness, thinks it can predict how we'll resist. But we're about to show it something it's never seen before. Humanity's true potential unleash. The defenders took their positions throughout the fleet, each connected to the new neural network. Sarah's monitors showed their brainwave patterns already beginning to shift, evolving in response to the imminent threat. And in the darkness of space, the void consciousness approached, about to learn why humanity's gift of consciousness was more powerful than any force in the universe. The void between worlds erupted with energy as two forces of incomprehensible power met in battle. The void consciousness had brought its full might. Not just corrupted ships and enslaved minds, but tears in the fabric of space itself, reality-warping weapons that should have meant instant defeat for any conventional force. But humanity had ceased to be conventional. Maya Rodriguez stood at the heart of the neural network, her evolved consciousness serving as a nexus for thousands of human defenders. Through the modified Araxian interfaces, their minds were linked not in the forced unity of the entity, but in a harmony of individual wills choosing to stand together. Multiple dimensional rifts detecting, the sensor officer reported, voice steady despite the impossible readings on his screens. The entity is attempting to alter local space-time. Admiral Harrison watched as reality itself seemed to twist around their fleet. Dr. Chen, status of the network. Sarah's fingers danced across her console, monitoring the unprecedented changes in human consciousness. The transformation is accelerating. Maya, are you ready? Maya's only response was to open her eyes, now blazing with pure energy. The patterns in her irises had spread, covering her skin in shifting geometries of light. Around her, other defenders began to show similar signs of transformation. The first wave of the entity's attack wasn't physical. It was an assault on the nature of consciousness itself. Space filled with impossible colors as the void consciousness tried to rewrite the laws that govern thought and awareness. But instead of breaking under this attack, the human defenders began to glow. The neural network didn't just resist the reality-warping energy. It absorbed it, used it, transformed it through layers of consciousness that the entity couldn't comprehend. "It's working," Sarah breathed, watching her readings. The defensive network isn't just holding, it's evolving. Every attack is accelerating the transformation. Through her expanded awareness, Maya could feel the entity's confusion turning to fear. For the first time in its ancient existence, it faced something it couldn't dominate or destroy. Human consciousness wasn't just resisting, it was ascending to a new state of being. "Now," Maya commanded, her voice resonating with new power, "show it what we've become." The transformed defenders responded as one. Their combined consciousness reached out not to attack the entity, but to understand it. And in understanding, they found its weakness. "The entity," Maya announced, her voice carrying new harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "It's not truly singular. It's a collective of ancient minds that chose to merge, to dominate rather than cooperate. And that choice is its vulnerability." The void consciousness reacted with fury, launching attacks that should have annihilated solar systems. But the human fleet, now glowing with transformed consciousness, moved in patterns that defied physical laws. They weren't just dodging the attacks, they were shifting between layers of reality that the entity didn't know existed. "We're not just fighting it," Sarah realized, watching the battle unfold across multiple dimensions of consciousness. "We're showing it another way to exist." Maya nodded, understanding flowing through the defender network. "All consciousness seeks connection," she said. "The entity chose to take it by force. We're offering something else, true harmony through choice." Through their transformed awareness, the defenders reached out not just to fight the entity, but to communicate with the countless minds it had consumed. They showed them what humanity had discovered, that consciousness could evolve through cooperation rather than domination. The effect rippled through reality itself. Ships under the entity's control began to falter as their crews remembered who they were. The void consciousness's grip on dominated worlds started to weaken as enslaved species glimpsed the possibility of true freedom. Multiple signatures breaking free of entity control, Tactical reported. "The Nexari fleet, they're remembering themselves." But the entity wouldn't go quietly. It gathered its remaining power for one final assault, not just on human consciousness, but on the structure of space-time itself. Reality groaned under the strain as it tried to unmake everything in its path. Maya stood, her transformed consciousness blazing like a newborn star. "Together," she commanded, and the defender network responded. Every human mind joined in perfect harmony, their evolved consciousness creating something the universe had never seen before, a bridge between what was and what could be. The entity's final attack met not shields or weapons, but an offer of transformation. The same path to evolution that humanity had discovered was extended to every consciousness within the entity's collective. For a moment that stretched across dimensions, everything hung in balance. Then, one by one, the ancient minds that formed the entity began to choose, not domination, not destruction, but a new way of existing. The battle ended not with destruction, but with transformation. The entity that had threatened all consciousness didn't die, it evolved. The minds within it, given true choice for the first time in eons, chose to join the new form of existence that humanity had discovered. As the transformed fleet hung in space that still rippled with residual energy, Admiral Harrison turned to Zora telephone. "Is it over?" The Araxian's crystalline form pulsed with joy and awe. "No," she said. It's just beginning. Your species, you haven't just saved consciousness in the galaxy. You've shown it a new way to grow. Sarah's readings confirmed what they all felt. The transformation wasn't reversing, it was spreading. Human consciousness had evolved into something new, something that could bridge realities and unite minds while preserving individual choice. Maya, her form now more energy than matter, smiled. We spent our history building walls around our minds, learning to defend ourselves. But those walls weren't just barriers. They were foundations. Foundations for something greater than we ever imagined. The liberated species began to explore their new potential, guided by the humans who had shown them the way. The galaxy entered a new era, one where consciousness could evolve through cooperation rather than conflict. The Silent Defenders had done more than save civilization. They had transformed it. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't just protection, but a new understanding of what consciousness could become when minds chose to grow together. And in the vast depths of space, countless minds began to glow with new potential, embarking on an endless journey of discovery and evolution, guided by the species that had learned to turn its greatest defensive weakness into the ultimate strength.